Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Như Song, and I'm a member of Group 7. My group includes 10 members, as you can see on the screen. On behalf of my group, me, Long Yi, and Phúc Wang will be the presenter today. We would like to take this opportunity to talk about the topic named Should Zoo be banned or do they form an important part of the animal education for the public? Our presentation will last for around 20 minutes. This presentation is included for main part, the data analysis, quick argument, opposition, and a summary. I will be in charge of the introduction and the first part, the data analysis. Long Yi and Wang Nguyễn will be in charge of the rest. Alright, now let's jump into the very first part, that is the introduction of the topics. Okay, there has been a lot of debates in recent years regarding whether zoos should be prohibited or not. Zoos should not be prohibited because they serve an important role in averting the extinction of some species and in animal protection. For decades, there has been a heated discussion about whether animals should be maintained in zoos or not. Some argue that capturing animals in zoos is vital for preservation of endangered species. Furthermore, zoos provide a service. Some of the animals we have today would have been extinct if we didn't have zoos to help repopulate them. Think about the animal you think you are trying to save by saying that zoos are bad. And then think about the animals that have been saved by zoos that are here. As with the implementation above, our team chose not to ban the zoo. Okay, now moving on to the data analysis. After we surveyed 114 people, we had some graph of the data below. First of all, the green areas is the amount of people who agree not to ban zoo. In contrast, the beige one means zoo should be banned. It is clearly seen on the survey that the majority of the respondents state that they agree that zoos should be allowed to operate. Just only 21% of them disagree. Okay, some people argue that what is in the zoos affect animal abuse, lack of living space, so people should ban the facility and get the information they want from the documentaries or TV show. We see these two options as non-equivalent, while 26% agree with this line of thinking. A majority disagree with a 74%, and they say that people cannot get the same value from media as they would from the real life experience with the animal. In addition, we have another survey to see if zoos have any educational benefits to society, and the data from the chart below illustrate more than 81% of people think that the zoo will have a clear and honest view of the appearance of the animal, which would be difficult without a zoo. Moreover, seeing animals realistically will have distinguished their characteristics, especially from the similar looking species, an opinion that accounts for 58.4%. The third is the opinion with a rate of 48.7%. That the zoo will give knowledge about the environment and living habit of the animal, and about 9% of people in the survey said that they didn't learn anything from the zoo. Okay, now on to the next feature. I will invite Mr. Long Yi to give you guys further information.
Well, thank you, Newcom, for inviting me for the next part. Based on those data analysis, we've had some insights about the current situation, and now I will be in charge of identifying some weak arguments that being discussed surrounding these topics. And in this part of the presentation, I will cover three main weak arguments that being discussed. Well, moving on to the first argument, zoos make animals suffer from being kept under captivity. Well, the argument says it is believed that captivity life is not suitable for animals, especially for some species. that need an open space to run across, such as zebras or giraffes. And due to the lack of exercise and stimulation, many of them have developed unnatural habits such as pacing back and forth or swaying from side to side. And according to the authors of Animals Make Us Human, these behaviors almost never occur in the wild. In captivity, these behaviors are so common that they have a name zoocosis or psychosis caused by confinement. And these habits clearly show animals stress and frustration over not being able to be free. And it can even lead to death. No matter how good the facility is, the zoo cannot give animals what they can. Well, the argument is a slippery slope fallacy, since algorithms try to say that capture captivity that animals create a faster death rate. And based on that, the argument concludes that zoos will only cause suffering to animals. Well, it is undeniable that the natural environment is far better than a zoo, but however, natural habitat is currently unable to support the present species due to human yearly activities. That is why zoos become one of the animal sanctuaries where animals can be protected. In other words, the captivity life keeps animals from danger. Furthermore, to deal with the unnatural habit, zoocosis, the scientists try their best to save those animals. Most zoos these days use natural looking barriers like moats or ditches to separate animals from people and have habitats that resemble the animal's natural environment. They also provide engaging activities to prevent boredom and mental deterioration. So it is not logical to conclude that zoos should be banned because just because they hold animals under captivity. And well, that is the first argument. Moving on to the next argument. Zoos violate animals' privacy. The argument states that despite a zoo's best efforts, its animals often are deprived of privacy. They have no way of escaping human eyes and are unable to engage in natural hunting and mating activities. It might affect their mating circle and lead to disastrous consequences in terms of breeding. And moreover, instead of educating people about animal welfare, zoos become a source of cheap entertainment at the cost of animals' privacy by doing circus shows. Therefore, animals should not be put in zoos. This argument is a scare tactic fallacy, since the argument is trying to threaten that zoos will affect animals' breeding and turn them into entertainment rather than providing any relevant premises to conclude that zoos are not suitable for them. In our opinion, first of all, some studies conclude that human visitors have no effect at all on animals. For example, penguins may end up spending more time underwater when they are watched, and that is completely no problem. And a second study found that the animals paid no mind to visitors. But still, David Attenborough, an animal winning animal watcher, agreed to give more privacy at zoos since there are some special cases. For instance, gorillas always guard their privacy, so people are not allowed to be behind the big sheets of glass. Secondly, it is totally wrong to say that zoos only use animals as tools for cheap entertainment because zoos don't just entertain, they also aim to educate beyond the positive impact that zoos is trying to have on animals. They often positively influence visitors as well. With a variety of programs geared towards children and adults, zoos teach people about the needs of animals and the importance of conservation. And if people get excited enough, chances are they'll be more inclined to into donating money to conservation efforts. And moving on to the last argument, zoos shorten the lifespan of animals. The argument says Mourn-Free has performed multiple zoo studies over the last 30 years, revealing that zoo enclosures are inadequate for the needs of the animals. As a result, animals may exhibit abnormal stereotypic behaviors, develop medical issues, and endure before dying prematurely. such as elephant lameness and behavioral issues, polar bear stereotypic behavioral, and increased newborn mortality. According to a new study, zoo elephants do not live as long as elephants in the wild. The researchers discovered that African elephants in European zoos have a typical lifespan of 16.9 years compared to 56 years for elephants who died naturally in Kenya at Botany Park. In conclusion, animals in the wild or in natural working situations live twice as long as their zoo counterparts. In our opinion, this argument is a hefty generalization fallacy because the arguer is drawing a general conclusion from a very small sample based solely on considering only one or a few single cases or studying a single case. The most mentioned here are the African elephant and the polar bear, which generalizes as representative for all animals, that those that live in zoos have shorter lifespans than those who live in natural environmental settings. Well, firstly, it appears that zoos protection are so safe that there are no natural hazards, and that these factors outweigh any social and behavioral problems that may arise from living in these conditions. It protects animals from predators, from disease, and even provides them with high food quality and reliability. Veterinary treatment and comfortable living conditions. From 1 year of study, it was found that 80% of mammals, including carnivores, live longer in zoos. Secondly, all the wild animals in zoos live lives of compromise. They have evolved mentally and physically to live very different lives from those in captivity. Animals adapt to specific animal natural environments and exhibit particular behaviors. The lifespans of zoo elephants have improved in recent years, suggesting an improvement in their care and raising, said one of the report's authors. Therefore, it cannot be completely asserted that species living in captivity have a lower lifespan than species living in the wild. And those are three main weak arguments that being identified by our group. Well, moving on to the next part, I will invite Phước Quang to be in charge. Can you turn on your mic, please, Wang?
Thank you, Long Yi. And now we will move on to the next part, which is consolidating arguments from opposition. The first argument is some people believe that the zoo is mostly for entertainment purposes rather than for the conservation of animals, particularly those on the verge of extinction. In some ways, we agree with this approach because we believe that national parks are the best places to protect animals since the animals will have a better habitat there. Furthermore, if certain zoos do not truly care for the animals, they should be closed to avoid negative effects. Nevertheless, if the other zoos do care for the animals, they should remain open and function as an educational tool as a way for people to better understand and appreciate animals, which means that the primary function of zoos is to preserve and protect endangered animals that have lost their habitat, and their secondary function is to serve as a place of entertainment and education. Moving on to the next argument, that all zoos should be closed down totally. However, for educational purposes, it is preferable to use the internet to find films, documents, and photographs. In some ways, this assumption is incorrect because we all know that seeing and absorbing something new directly and feeling it with more senses, bringing more profound and nuanced sentiments, is far more successful than looking at it through a computer screen. The zoo must open its doors to teach young people in particular, as well as everyone in general, since we will be able to feel those creatures more vividly, allowing us to feel more protective of them and closer to them. Moving on to the final argument, zoochosis, which is a condition that affects some enclosed animals. These are mainly caged animals who display odd and repetitive habits. Animals maintained in zoos are frequently affected by being isolated from the wild, being injected with medications, the impacts of confinement, or human influence in general. Because most animals in captivity are likely to develop this illness, it's an inescapable result and a tough problem to solve. This causes considerable physical and mental injury to animals, and they can even attack people. But regardless, restoring them to the wild does not guarantee that they will be alleviated of this condition. And I still believe that treating animals with zoochosis is a far better option than leaving them back to the wild. Which leads us to the conclusion. With all things considered, there are benefits and drawbacks to whether or not zoos should be prohibited. It's undeniable that animals that stay true to their habitat will be more rational about environmental factors such as temperature, food, or space. But the biggest problem is that their survival in the natural environment is temporary. There's no guarantee that they will live in the wild forever. Even small animals like deers, rabbits, etc., squirrels are under the daily threat of predators such as tigers, leopards, and lions. Moreover, the fact that the zoos are regularly rescuing animals, calling for people to donate and to care for and upgrading the zoo is also one of the best plans for all animals. And this is the end of our presentation. We will now talk about what we had gone through during the presentation. So we started with why zoos should not be banned. And then we followed with a data analysis of statistics regarding animals in captivity. Then we proceeded to weed out the weak arguments and correct them. And finally, we discussed the oppositional arguments. And this has been our presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you have a great day.